Hello my friends and welcome back to another video where today we will be discussing the elves and their involvement in this Amazon Lord of the Rings show, along with the subject around rumours and why we haven't heard a great deal so far. I know a lot of people are waiting for a video solely focused around the elves, as a lot so far, as mentioned earlier, has been centered on Numenor and some bits around the dwarves as well. I will also explain some of the things we have heard about the elves but haven't released, as there isn't enough depth to them or context. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, the elves' involvement in the show is an interesting topic at the moment, due to one thing mainly, which is the apparent late Second Age setting, aka the Akalabeth, which is the time period the Amazon show will presumably be set in, and that is of course unconfirmed, and then how the elves are integrated into that late setting. The second scenario here is that there has been a major time compression to the extent where instead of Tar-Minastir sending a fleet to Middle-earth to save them from Sauron, it would be Tar-Palantir or Tar-Miriel doing it, effectively bridging the 2000 years odd gap between the two main staple events and storylines of the Second Age. However, it is fair to say that the elves play a larger role in the forging period in the mid-Second Age, so having the time compression option would allow the elves to have a more canonical role in the late period. But for the time being, let's discuss the scenario where there isn't a time compression and the show is just the late Second Age. Well, on the last episode of the Second Age show, we revealed that there will be a Celebrimbor at some point in season 1, and a scene was formed where the making of the rings happened in a very cool rocky chamber. So we don't know what ring or rings were being forged, but it is safe to say that if in the first season at some point the rings are already being forged, then this must possibly eliminate the chance of us seeing a fully forging linear narrative, as I'm sure you would want to spend at least one season of building up Annatar and his relationship with Celebrimbor, unless this forming of the ring scene that was recorded was one of the final shots of season 1, which I quite doubt anyways. Therefore, the rings and Celebrimbor's story must either be in a prologue, flashback, or be time compressed. This extends to us seeing Eregion as well, as some fans' biggest hope for this show was to see Eregion, this prime elven kingdom, with their ruler Celebrimbor, with the amazing Great Eye Madain. There could still be a chance if Amazon does indeed crunch the timeline. But I am thinking containing it to a prologue is the most likely scenario at the minute, and I would have preferred if this was the case we didn't see Eregion or the elves at all, instead of pushing them into a prologue. If it is for an episode or two, you don't get to flesh out the character of Celebrimbor or show the complex interactions with Annatar, which makes Celebrimbor's eventual death and double crossing by Sauron much less impactful for the viewer, as you probably only saw him for an hour or so. I personally hope that is not the way Amazon are going with their Eregion subplot, and there are still many possibilities through time crunches, but if it is contained to the first 2 episodes, that does seem like the most likely scenario at the minute. So we have covered Eregion and Celebrimbor, and we will get on to what I have heard about the elves in a bit. But now, next, let's look at the apparent main character of the show, Galadriel. The elephant in the room here is of course Galadriel in Numenor, which is a dramatic shift for a character like that, who apparently spent most of her time originally in Lindon, moving towards Eregion and further west of the Misty Mountains. But I think Galadriel in Numenor establishes 2 things. Firstly, Amazon are clearly creating story storylines and plots to include the elves and focal figures like Galadriel into the late Second Age setting. As mentioned earlier, the elves' main stake in the Second Age is during the mid-Second Age onto the War of the Elves and Sauron. So having Galadriel in Numenor gives the elven character something pivotal to do and connects her to the plot of the late Second Age. Secondly, we are beginning to see trinkles of how the elves may potentially be involved in the show, as Galadriel going to Numenor basically as an envoy due to some orc raids which are clearly affecting the elves as well, because remember, during this time of the late Second Age, there is great, as we can tell from the leaks, hatred towards the elves bordering racism, and canonically we have previous kings of Numenor removing the elvish languages and everything got to do with the elves in Numenor. So it would be quite risky for Galadriel to take such a voyage, but it must be quite an alarming thing with these orc attacks, and they are clearly affecting the elves as well, not just the men villages. Thus, maybe Amazon have done it so the elves are feeling the effect of Sauron and his forces as well, not just the Numenorean port cities or man villages. Now, I am sure for the past few weeks or months some of you may have been wondering, why haven't we heard that many rumours or leaks about the elves so far released by us Fellowship of Fans? Honestly, it's just due to the fact that we haven't heard that much, and the tiny snippets we have heard, which I will be revealing now, it's not that groundbreaking. Most of what we are hearing is of shoots happening in beautiful forests with nature props, with some of the main elven characters talking and discussing, sometimes around a nice lovely table. I do hope that isn't what all the elves are doing in the show, haha. That would be quite worrying. Except really from the fact that apparently nearly every Gen Z, New Zealand beautiful model or actor has been cast as an elven extra, and apparently some of them were quite bored on set. And really around the fact that some of their ears were having like Vulcan ears. But except from that, there really isn't much else to it, which in turn is a nice thing to have a mystery around what the elves will truly be doing during this time period in this show, and what Amazon will be giving us, of course, bar Galadriel in Numenor. Moving on, the areas not covered yet is around Lindon, Gil-Galad and Elrond. So, if the show is starting in the late Second Age, then Rivendell would have already been formed for a few thousand years earlier, and canonically does not come into play until pre-3 around years before the War of the Last Alliance, where some armies were stationed at Imladris and important war councils took place. Also, while we talk about Elrond, another interesting thing is that we did hear leaks a few months ago around Robert Aramayo being on some Dwarven sets, and mainly the Khazad-dûm sets, and it is rumoured that Robert Aramayo is potentially playing Elrond. That is still unconfirmed, and this is said to be in the first 2 episodes, which raises the questions, will be seeing dealings between the elves and dwarves in the show, or will Amazon be continuing maybe some pre-existing hatred? But we do know that there was Na'vi and Celebrimbor during this period, but maybe this could be a thing at the back of our minds that there could be potentially Elrond on some Dwarven sets. And I think while this also extends to Elrond and his involvement, maybe is he involved with the orc attack somehow? This is just pure speculation, and similarly with Lindon, I'm finding it difficult at the moment to piece together these two with everything else we've heard so far about the show and how Amazon are doing this. Please let me know in the comments below what you are most excited to see around the elves in The Lord of the Rings on Prime, and then what is the impact of these recent rumours towards their involvement in the show. Thank you guys for watching, I really appreciate it. Please like and subscribe. But until the next video my friends, goodbye.